Hi, this is Sue Greenwald with the Empowered Light Holistic Expo. I'm here today with Michelle Bunting and Daniel Endy. We're going to be talking about a presentation we're doing at the May 1st through 3rd Expo in Oaks, Pennsylvania. It's going to be called Beyond Abraham. Seth speaks again. And Michelle will be channeling Seth. And she'll be speaking both Saturday, May 2nd at 5 p.m. and Sunday, May 3rd at 3 p.m. There is a charge of $30 each for each presentation. They will each be slightly unique, and we hope you'll come. Hi, Michelle. Hi, Daniel.
Hi, Sue. Thank you for having me. Very happy to be here.
Good to see you.
Hello.
Hi, Daniel.
Hello, Sue. Good to see you.
Excellent.
Normally, you're in the area here, but you're now out in Arizona.
I live out in Arizona now. I was told, and I point up to the heavens to get my butt out here. So I just basically looked for an apartment, and here I am. And it is pretty awesome, although on some hands I think, have I gone crazy? I left my family, but it is very nice to live out here. So I consider myself pretty lucky.
Wonderful.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So Daniel, I think you're going to be talking a little bit about the talk that we'll be doing at the expo. Michelle will be doing. So for those that might not be familiar with Abraham or Seth, can you kind of give us an overview of what that is?
Absolutely. Seth is one of the earliest folks who's came on the scene here. He came about in the late 60s, early 70s. First book that was published was called The Seth Material, and then Seth Speaks, which took off. Seth Speaks became a very big bestseller. It was published in paperback, and that's how I found it back in 1972. So one of the first popular channeled books of this current era. And prior to that, you had folks like Edgar Cayce, who was known as the Sleeping Prophet, and he would do his thing in a way. And there have been others along the many years, but Seth is kind of the first of the modern group, and that is what inspired Esther and Jerry Hicks to go and research on what this was all about. They heard about Seth, and they started looking into visiting Seth, and they found their way to Elmira, New York, which is where Seth was located at the time. Well, Jane Roberts and her husband, Robert Butts. And they discovered at that time that Jane had already passed away. It was in the early 80s, around 83-ish when she passed away. And so they were sort of disappointed, but that started them on their journey. And Esther began meditating, as she says, and after a few months, she started to feel some weird things going on, and before you know it, she was connecting to Abraham, and Jerry was like, "Okay, let's take this show on the road."
Right.
And Esther says if she had known what was in store, she never would have said yes. But anyway, many of us are familiar with Abraham and Esther, and really enjoy that material a great deal. And so this is a return to the origins of that with Seth.
I don't know. I know a lot of people are familiar with Abraham, but I know my first experience with Abraham was incredible. And it was year 2000. I had somebody hand me some cassette tapes that they had no label on them. And she said, "Here, listen to these." So I popped them in, not even knowing what they were. And I got covered with goosebumps, and I started to cry. And I realized that was what I was looking for my whole life. Like when I was a teenager, my grandmother would take me to church, and I just could not, I knew what I was being taught was not correct. And I really had no interest in learning that. And of course, I was kind of a pain in the butt about it. But I knew when I heard Abraham, that was it for me. So I became an Abraham junkie. I saw them several times in Philadelphia. I had the weekly CD program. I read all the books, and it was so pivotal in my life. And of course, the material that they talk about is timeless and so
Yeah,
helpful.
and it's been pivotal for me as well. When I first found Abraham, it didn't make sense, and I had to go off and listen to some other wisdom sources, in particular Bashar, who some people may have heard of. And he was the key to unlock this area for me. And then I came back to Abraham and I said, oh, okay, now I understand it. And since 2011, beginning of 2011, I've been leading one of the largest law of attraction groups in the country, certainly a very active one here in the Philly area called Law of Attraction in Action. And I share my understandings of why we're here and how to live a successful life. And we get a great turnout multiple times a month. And then I met Michelle. I saw a listing on Meetup saying there's a new group around the Seth teachings. And because Seth was my earliest entree to this back in 1974, when it was still very new, and I was just a teenager, I found it and I was like, wow, that's really interesting. And that set me on this general path. And I, like yourself, felt that most of the religious dogma didn't quite work, so we were born for this new agey stuff, I guess. But then I saw this meetup group with Michelle, and I reached out and said, hey, if you'd like some help, I run a successful group and I'd be happy to help. And then we got to meet each other and realized that, wow, we have a lot in common, and we've been working together very closely ever since. And this whole thing has developed in just a few months.
It's so exciting, isn't it? The material is timeless, and of course, they have a broader view of what's going on than we do from our human perspective. So I find it very helpful and very informative. Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about how you got started? And I want to also say one other thing before we go there. We're talking about channeled material. So can one of you explain what channeled means to the person that may not know already?
How about you, Michelle?
Bueller?
Oh,
would you like
I
me?
defer. You've been into the channeling
Okay.
wisdom.
Yeah, you're sort of new to it. That's a really valid point. I've been into it since I found the Seth material, and I've read dozens of other channeled works, including The Law of One and many others. And a book, one of my favorite books, is Oneness by Rasha, which is a channeled work. Neil Donald Walsh and the Conversations with God, all channeled works. So basically, if you haven't heard of channeling, it's where an individual like Michelle is able to connect to spiritual wisdom that is not in the body here, and they connect through folks like Abraham, connect through Seth, connect through the medium, in this case Michelle, the trance channeler. There's a lot of different terms for it, and they use their vocal mechanism to communicate with us. And Seth, once Seth got started and was comfortable with Jane, he announced at one point, after a couple of years of regular sessions, that he was going to be writing a book. And they were like, okay. And then he just dictated this book wholesale, and it required very little editing. Robert Butts recorded everything longhand in transcripts, and it became a bestseller. So
Right.
the wisdom is undeniable.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how'd you get started channeling, Michelle? Tell us like your background, like what you do for your living and your livelihood, and kind of how this progressed for you.
Well, it's a really interesting story, Sue. Unlike Daniel, I am comparatively a neophyte in the industry. I became very interested in exploring Dr. Brian Weiss's practices on past life regressions. And one of the things that he purported was that anyone could do it safely. And so I wanted to basically experiment. Now, prior to this exploratory journey, I had no knowledge of mediums or psychics or anything remotely in the industry. My ability to even understand that language was at a zero. I was
Right.
just very captivated with the material that Dr. Weiss. And so I thought, let's experiment with that. Let's see if he's right. He seems very intelligent, Yale, Harvard, Mount Sinai. And so, very scientific approach. And so I wanted to try it. And so using his method, I did that, and I found that he was right. And not only was it safe, it was enormously pleasurable to capture in this brain the memories that are located within you from the other life experiences that have all kind of culminated into who your beingness is expressing itself as right now. And so it almost became, I want to say, almost an addiction. I then taught another friend of mine to also do the regression so that we could switch back and forth. And so we were doing this for about a year every week and just exploring all of, our different life experiences and specifically targeting the ones that would be most useful. Now, interestingly enough, a part of that experience is when you transition out of a particular life, you can go to the place, which is what I called it, right? Going to the place where you transitioned to after you left a body. And so what started to happen was I was spending a lot of time in the place, right? Where we go when we're in non-physical. So what started to happen was, I thought it was very interesting how we could communicate with loved ones, how we could even communicate spiritually with other people who are still in physical form here. So that became very playful. So then we started playing with that. And then all of a sudden there was, I call them the you, for lack of a better expression. The you started showing up and only one person would talk for the you, meaning the beings were shaped in a you, but it was only the one on the end that would do all of the talking. And so the problem became when they started using language that I didn't understand. They started talking about being vibrational. They started talking about when we thought, well, they showed up, so we would start asking questions. And they were temporal questions, of course, like, when is my next job change going to happen? And very silly questions. Looking back now, very silly temporal questions like that. And so we were not obviously making progress, and their answers were in a language that we really frankly didn't understand. Again, we don't come from a metaphysical background, right? So then it became a challenge to try to understand the information they were giving me during the times when I was in the place where we go in non-physical when we leave our bodies. So one day I was kind of explaining my frustration to a friend, and I was saying I really would like to understand what information what are they trying to say? What is vibrational? What is that? Things like that. And she said, why don't you tell me some of the things they're saying? And so I started regurgitating some of the information, and she said, oh my God, Michelle, that's Abraham. And I said, who's Abraham?
Right.
And she said, I'm going to send you a link and I want you to listen to it. And I said, okay. And she sent me the link, and I hung up the phone and I hit play. And within the first 2 minutes, I understood that's who I have been communicating with, right? And so I still didn't understand the dynamic between Esther and Abraham, but I started to listen to all of the Abraham material, still not really understanding the language, but understanding now why we were not getting temporal answers to temporal questions, right? That's when I started to understand that time is time is an element that runs all at the same time. So when you're asking teachers, well, what month am I going to have my new work experience? You see, that's a temporal issue. Right. When past, present, and future are all running together at the same time, that's not a June 5th answer, right? So there was a learning curve that I started to experience. I started to be able to speak their language. I listened during the day, and then once a week I would connect through a past life regression, but really at this point, really looking forward to going to the other side and having that interesting communication. Then one day I was doing a past life regression for, I was having one done for me. And I went, but before the regression could conclude, before I could get to the natural conclusion and transition out of the life, which is what I was expecting, it was interrupted. And all of a sudden, when I looked at myself, which you can do when you're in a deep meditative state, I looked like I look now. And so then I understood that there was a problem, because when you go to a past life, it's a different life experience in a different physical form. You don't look like you do right now.
Right.
So through the process of figuring out what was happening and what was going on, I'm going to share a very funny story. There was a bunch of stars that started to fill the sky. There was no buildings. There was nothing. There was no people. I was alone in this another new place. And so I realized very shortly that they were not stars, they were beings. And there was millions, beyond millions. And I remember telling my girlfriend in a very odd voice, "We are not alone." Right? And she was, of course, equally awed back and said, "What do you mean?" And then comes an enormous face that fills up half the sky in front of all and surrounded by all of these beings. And we were so unprepared. We were prepared for a traditional regression and, of course, the questions that we had afterwards. We were unprepared, so we ended the session. And so we realized that we had to go back to that place that I had inadvertently stepped into. And we had to find out who Big Head was. And for 1 week, we called him Big Head. And I know, again, neophyte in the industry,
Yeah,
right?
Big Head.
So, yeah, I know. So a week rolls by. We're now, of course, we're very intelligent women. We have our list of questions and we are prepared now. And so I re-enter the place where I was, where there are no people and there are no buildings and there is the nothingness, but you and the universe. And sure enough, here comes Big Head. And we were ready. And I let her know he's here, right? So the first question she asked is, "What is your name?" And he says, very slowly, the energy started to kind of roll through my body. And I did not realize at the time until much later that that was channeling. When you start to feel the almost electricity kind of run through your body. And it was a very heavy kind of energy. And the answer was, "I am that I am." And so I relayed the information to my friend, and in a stupor, she said, "That's the name." And so we realized, okay, we're going to roll with this. It's not quite who we thought we were going to talk to. So she got out her questions and asked a list of questions of "I am that I am." And at that point, he answered some questions. What was interesting to me is he wanted everyone to know who he was. And so after every answer that he gave, he repeated his name. And then at a certain point, he declined to answer any more questions and indicated that there were others who could answer the remainder of our questions. And we said, "Well, who is that?" And there was another being that came forth, and we asked him what his name was, and he said that his name was Seth. And of course, I did not really understand who Seth was either. So then, of course, we had to go through the process of finding out who is this Seth person. But then all of this information started pouring in on my phone and my computer. I actually didn't have to look for it. And I realized this is the Seth person. And so then, instead of continuing to do past life regressions, we decided that it was much more playful and fun to go have interactions with this entity that was entreed to me by "I am that I am." And I have been doing it ever since. a couple of months after I started doing it. And then we started doing that consistently, getting information to life's important questions about religion, about conflict, about time, about love, about, you know, our lives here and purpose and goals. And so then one day I was at a party, and a friend of mine happens to actually be an intuitive medium. And I was telling her how we were having this very wonderful experience. And she turned to me very concerned, and she says, Michelle, do you understand that that's called channeling? And I said, oh, that's a thing. There's a word for that. And she said, that's definitely a thing, Michelle. And so of course I turned to my other friend and I said, oh, listen to her. It's a thing what we're doing. And of course, you know, then the language started to come. And then of course we had to do more research to understand. Shortly after, well, we did that for many, many months. And we thought it was lovely having this direct pipeline to infinite intelligence, where we literally could get the secrets of the universe. And how fabulous was this? And then one day, a man named Daniel had messaged me over the phone, and the rest is history. And here I am in front of you, and shortly in front of all the wonderful people. And I'm going to be offering that guidance that to them as well. I had started to do channeling for on request privately, but in the last couple of months, Daniel and I have worked together so that we can bring this information of empowerment and of love and of healing to more than just my circle. And so I'm stepping out, as you say, and I'm looking forward to doing it at the expo. That's going to be really exciting.
It is very exciting, and especially for people that haven't seen either Abraham. Well, you know, no one really has seen Seth, if you will, but for those that haven't experienced Abraham, it's a great. Usually, Abraham will come in and give a general message, and I find that it's always it ties in the questions and the theme of the audience. Yeah. But then you're going to be doing the same sort of a format. Am I correct? You'll be giving a general...
Yes, we've actually had some events before, you know, all of the what we're dealing with now occurred. We actually started having group events that were really wonderful, where you like the energy in the room was just fizzling. And I don't remember this, of course, but the guests would tell me afterwards that when they entered the room, for attendees that were coming in late, their skin started lighting up and the energy was really fabulous. I always just feel an amazing amount of love. Like if I could just reach out and, you know, it's just, oh, I love the energy. And so for me, I actually enjoy doing this. And to do it at the expo, I think is going to be a tremendous amount of fun and clarity, right? For everybody that comes.
And so, go ahead, Daniel.
And we follow the Abraham model. Sorry, somebody's trying to call. We start with a short statement, welcome, hi, Seth, and then we take questions from the audience. And Seth advises people from the metaphysical perspective of, you know, how to help with whatever issues they're dealing with. And we pick people randomly through the audience. They come up and ask their questions. Seth likes to have them right in front, have the energy right there. And it's very similar to an Abraham experience.
Right. And so you'll be doing a general message, and then people will actually have the opportunity to go up and speak with Seth and get their question answered. That's really exciting.
What's really great is I actually started reading Seth after I started reading the books after I started channeling him. And I find that what's great is that the information that he gave in the 60s and 70s still stands true, is still obviously very cooperative with all of the other information that the teachers are giving here as well. But this time he is coming forth in a way that allows anyone, right, to access him one-on-one in our present day, where he can give the information that's useful to us on how we can grow and develop and evolve and expand, you know, using, you know, the power that is within each of us. And I find that to be really great. I like to listen back to the recordings afterwards, so I can hear the different kinds of questions that were asked and the information that was given to them.
Right.
Yeah.
I always found that when I went to an event like that, all the questions in the room, like they were always answered, and it was always like a theme. Like the right people were attracted for those
Yeah.
questions. It's very interesting how that would
Absolutely.
always happen. Yeah.
It's amazing the energy, and the more people in the room, the more it tends to create a common experience that everybody benefits from. It's just astounding. And if you would think that fewer people might be a better experience, but in reality, more people is a better experience.
Right.
We've
Yeah.
had as many as 30 people at one time, and everybody just got something out of every question. It's amazing. And we were headed towards even bigger experiences before the lockdown happened here.
Yeah.
Unfortunate. Well, the
Yeah.
good thing is that this allows people at a very modest cost and a minimal amount of time to, number one, to feel the energy and experience the whole, the channeled experience for themselves, but also to potentially get their questions answered. And even if they don't get up with the microphone to ask a question, their questions will be answered. It's
Well, see,
very,
that's what we found as well. You know, in the beginning, there are a lot of raised hands, but then as the time progresses, the amount of hands that actually are trying to get into the front seat is kind of goes down, because they're getting their answers as they go, even though they're not the ones directly asking them.
right.
So it's just really huge, wonderful benefit for all, whether they're in the chair or not.
Right. And they're feeling that energy, and they're
Yeah.
it's really an expansion of where they are now. It's very exciting.
There's an energy that's created when a body of people in spirit come together for the purposes of evolution and expansion, and it generates its own energy, and it's tangible, and it's empowering, and it's unbelievably exciting. And so we're looking forward to experiencing that at the expo.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you as well. Of course, I have read all those books, and I'd like to say I've climbed up the spiritual mountain the hard way. Reading the books, going to the workshops and seminars. That were
Right.
like you fall right into it almost. It's so funny.
I did. I actually, I relied upon people like Daniel and other friends who know a lot about the metaphysical world to actually explain things to me. It just literally comes. Yeah.
And the number of synchronicities around this experience are amazing. I've been on the Seth path for a long time. And then I met some people locally, and it turns out one of them is a videographer who actually created a documentary about Seth, and a long interview with Robert Butts, who was Jane Roberts' husband. And he explains, their whole journey towards meeting Seth and everything. And then not only did that occur, but the person who came to our second event, her maiden name was Jane Roberts.
Oh my golly.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff.
That was
What
interesting.
I'm also liking about what you're doing, with the face-to-face presentations, people have the experience. And yes, the books have been out there, but it takes time to read the books, and it's not the same as being in the energy and asking Seth face-to-face the question you want to have answered.
I absolutely agree with that. My experience came energetically. I wanted clarity on certain issues about my own, purpose here in life. And this is the experience that was brought to me as a result of that asking. And what I like is that I find the Abraham material very lovely to follow. And so what Seth does is, using the words that I have, is able to bridge the understanding and explanation further of the Abraham material from the Seth perspective, which is, for me, life-changing, but also I think gives the audience members an aha kind of, that's really what it means. And so oftentimes in his explanation, he will use a common saying of Abraham and link it to one of his teachings in the Seth material and bridges the two together, which is really fabulous. Yeah. Yeah.
Very interesting. Now, have you been recording your sessions so far?
Well, you know, we recorded all of them since I started this journey years ago. I did because I thought it would be nice to have so I could listen back, because you're not going to remember everything in a regression. And, you know, and so by chance, I have it all recorded. And so, and then of course, coming together with Daniel, we've been continuing that practice as well. Yeah. So I actually have the recording of first when he was only big head, and then when we realized he was, I know it's terrible, you know, but that now I know he is I am that I am, and how Seth got almost was brought to me by him. And so it actually, I didn't listen to that recording for almost a year.
Wow.
Yeah. And so when I said, let me listen to that thing, and when did that happen? And that's when I realized, oh, okay. So then the magnitude, now I'm able to understand that now that I'm in the metaphysical world. Now I'm able to understand the full import of what happened.
It sounds like it perfectly, organically synthesized and came together.
I know it sounds silly, but I have to catch up to, I have the experience first, and then I have to find out what that was after. So that's why Daniel is, you know, been really wonderful and very helpful, and he's explained a lot during, you know, this particular video. He just is more knowledgeable when it comes to the metaphysical world than I am. So I thought his explanation would be more beneficial.
Well, he's got a different perspective, so it's good. It's a
Yes.
good.
We're a good team. We're a great team. Yeah.
And Michelle is an absolute natural. She, you know, this was part of the life plan we've determined.
Yes.
And we're pretty sure we were destined to meet for this purpose, because it, you know, when things are destined to happen, it just kind of flows, bang, bang, bang.
It's easy. It was easy.
And yeah, and so we've been recording the sessions, the group sessions, as well as Michelle has the audio recordings of all the prior sessions, and we're planning to put those online sometime soon. If you want to check out beyondabraham.com, that's the website we've set up to as our base of operations for this journey that we're taking. And I can share a couple of the book cover images from the original Seth books if people haven't seen these before. But these were some of the originals. Seth Speaks and a couple of different versions of that. Here's another version that was re-released later, and then they updated the cover to this one, The Eternal Validity of the Soul, The Nature Personal Reality, The Unknown Reality. So Seth, it turns out, actually was involved in, were published like 20 plus books through Jane, believe it or not.
I didn't know that. I had the ones that you just showed, and I didn't know there were more.
There's quite a few. There's dreams, there's lots of them. Anyway.
So someone that was really interested could purchase the Seth books online or whatever.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I find it interesting that many people don't really even know who Edgar Cayce was or who Abraham is. And you know, everyone finds information in their own way.
Yes.
Like my kids, for example, I took a group down to Virginia Beach a few years ago, and I was talking about Edgar Cayce, and they finally says, "Mom, who's Edgar Cayce?" And I looked at them like, "Are you crazy? You don't know?" So I explained it to them, and they were like really unfazed. They were like, "Big deal," you know. But it was it's a big thing, you know. And what he did was document. That's his claim to fame. Not only was he a great channeler, he documented every reading that he did. So now we have recordings, which makes it easy to go back and, you know, remember the things that we might have forgotten and get those little
Yeah.
details. And he had of course, you know, it was 100 years ago or whatever. He had a different way of speaking, maybe an older fashioned way of speaking. And he referenced a lot of, you know, more religious texts and things. So I find that Abraham was a little bit more modern and
Yes.
streamlined there. It's really all about love, you know, but
Yes.
just a different perspective of how they speak.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
Accurate representation.
And it's such great material. You know, when you dig into it, you research and you read these different pieces, and they come together like puzzle pieces.
Yeah.
And I think they're designed specifically in a way that leads to our spiritual evolution.
Right. Right. And we really have to be open to new information for spiritual progression. Like, you
Yes.
know, some people fall into it like you do, Michelle. Some people have to, you know, climb up that mountain reading whatever. It doesn't matter how
Yep.
you get there. It is what it is, but you have to be open to the ideas. And they may seem very foreign at first. They may seem
Yes.
but then once you say, okay, well, let's just assume this could be right, what then? It's so exciting to hear new information.
It is. And we're hoping to represent it. We're just really excited, and we're keeping our fingers crossed that all will be well.
Yeah.
You know, and we're going to be able to represent, you know, in a very new way, the information at the expo.
Yeah. So the expo is May 1st or 3rd. Michelle is speaking 5 p.m. on Saturday, May 2nd, and it's 3 p.m. on Sunday the 3rd. Tickets are $30. You do need a general admission ticket, and they are available online. Right now we're in unusual times, so we're not sure exactly what's going to happen, but we are proceeding as if the expo is going to be amazing, and we will have it.
Absolutely, yes. Absolutely, yes. I am with you on that.
Yes. And the program is already out on the website, the full program. So a person could go and download every talk that's been planned. They'll get kind of a little brief description about it. And also they can go to the website, empoweredlight.com, to the events tab and see the speakers, the vendors, and everything that's planned. It will probably morph a little bit in the next couple of weeks. You know, like I said, we're in uncertain times, and we're not sure exactly what's happening. And as soon as we do know, we'll be moving forward full force.
Wonderful. Sounds great.
It's going to be great. I am very excited to see your presentation.
I'm excited to go.
Yeah, yeah. Anything else we'd like to add? And your website was beyondabraham.com.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we all should just, you know, focus and have loving thoughts.
Right.
And, you know, and I think that the energy of sharing loving thoughts for ourselves and each other are going to, you know, turn the tide on what we're experiencing now. So I'm looking forward to seeing that happen.
I think it's
no doubt.
Incredible weekend, and I think people will really be greatly satisfied. It will give them a great amount of comfort. It will give them direction to come to talk, and I think that's what we all want. We want like validation. We want confirmation that we're doing the right thing, and of course we all want to be pointed on the path. Everything is the path. Every step that we take is the path.
Yes.
I want the streamlined version, of course, but
of course, don't we all?
always, you can't learn less, right?
I agree. Well said.
So it's very interesting how it will come together, and I'm sure that everybody in the room will get a great deal out of your talk.
I believe
Amen.
so. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you in May. And please go on to empoweredlight.com. You can look at all the talk information, get the tickets there. And if you have any questions, just let me know. Thank you again, both of you.
Thank you, Sue, for having us. We'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon. Bye-bye.
Alrighty. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.